We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Yo guys! Sorry that it took a month. I'm Yuruzi and this is part 6 of What If Naruto sends himself back in time to fix his mistakes. Naruto, at 26, has lived through 10 years of war. At the end, with nothing left to call home, he sends himself back to the beginning, to the day of his younger self's graduation, in an attempt to change it all. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 8, Part 1. Yoshino huffed exasperatedly, but her mouth curled up into a smile. Just don't think too much. You'll get frown lines if you do. She settled against him again and Shikaku turned to look up at the moon. They had a chance now. Haruki had come all the way back, 14 years into the past, and Shikaku would be damned if the same thing happened again. He had several hours before the next council meeting. After talking to Haruki, he didn't find it so strange that the meeting was called so late. No doubt it involved him and the next step to writing the future. He just hoped he could be of help without revealing too much. Haruki had been adamant that the others should only become aware of the truth by figuring it out themselves. He actually agreed with the redhead on that though. After the meeting he would meet with Haruki Hazashi and the Sandame to work out a better background for the man. The Sandame was sure getting lazy if this was his best shot. However, that could be thought on later. For now, in his remaining hours of peace, Shikaku was going to hold his wife and treasure the moment while it lasted. It was midnight and the moon was full and high in the sky. The village gates were locked and Anbu and Chunin were on their standard night watches. The barrier team night shift was fully active and the majority of the civilians were back to their home in peaceful ignorant bliss as Konoha's leadership and several of its high-ranking jonin converged on a secret meeting in the Konoha council chamber. Most unaware of the purpose for the late summons. The Hokage couldn't have called us earlier or something? Or tomorrow? I was eating dinner. Kurenai patted her irate friend on the shoulder. Anko, Sandame-sama wouldn't have called us at this time if it wasn't important. Anko rolled her eyes but settled for sulking as they approached the council chamber. She had bumped into Kurenai outside the Hokage tower and, after realizing that they had both been summoned but having no idea why, had made their way up together. As they approached the outside of the room, they noticed a large number of Anbu, enough for over 3 squads, were stationed outside the meeting room along with 2 Anbu captains. They both blinked in surprise when they saw the number and level of the guards and mildly wondered why the need for such extensive security. Both gained a serious demeanor as they passed through what appeared to be security seals as the doors opened and the Anbu ushered them in the chamber. It was then that they saw other shinobi already assembled in the room. Several chairs lined neatly the wall on the left side of the small room in rows, while the U-shaped table in the center where presumable the council members sat for meetings. In front of the U-shaped table was a large desk where presumably that the Hokage sat when governing the council meetings. After taking in the room and noticing the occupants that had already arrived, the 2 kunoichi made their way over to them. Yugao. Hey. Anko made her way over to the small group gathered on one side of the room, Kurenai following behind her. And you 4 idiots too. What's going on? Used to her personality, they all took the insult, which was really more of an endearment, in stride and greeted the 2 kunoichi with a round of nods. Not sure, Hayate was the one to reply, straddling a wooden chair with his arms propped on the back of it. We all got here only a few minutes ago. As they took seats along the left wall, Kurenai frowned at Hayate, studying the Kenjutsu expert closely for a long moment. There were only the faintest of bags under his eyes and his shoulders were completely relaxed for once. Hayate? Kurenai noted the other's grins with some consternation. You look better today. A lot better. Did something happen? Hayate grinned openly at her. Oh good, it really is noticeable. I just got out a few hours ago and haven't really seen anyone yet. Kurenai looked around, feeling completely lost. Guys, what's going on? Got out from where? Anko spoke up again, waving an excited hand in Hayate's direction. You can't tell, Kurenai. Hayate's been cured. Kurenai sat frozen in her chair, stunned as she looked from one face to another, all smiling broadly back at her. You're serious? Taking turns, Genma and Reidu explained the previous day's events to her as Kurenai took it in with wide eyes. And then, smiling in delight herself, she congratulated Hayate enthusiastically. She wasn't as close to Hayate or the others as much as Anko was, but she still considered them friends, and she was grateful to whoever it was that had managed to pull something like this from thin air. You all seem happy. What's the occasion? They all turned to see Asuma walk in, Guy following close behind. The story was repeated again with no less feeling, and Asuma smiled and clapped the Kenjutsu specialist on the back before taking a seat next to Kurenai while Guy all but bounced in his chair, proclaiming about the wonders of youth. This continued on for several seconds before Anko shut him up with a well-placed threat to his manhood. So does anyone know what's going on? Kotetsu asked as they all finally settled down. Asuma shrugged. I got a message to head to the Hokage Tower and to the council chamber, but nothing more than that. That's what the rest of us got too, Izumo nodded, leaning back in his chair. Wonder what the Hokage wants. Genma suddenly straightened, eyes focused over their heads. I'm going to guess that it has something to do with what Haruki was saying the other day. Take a look. They all turned and then hastily straightened in their seats as the 6 clan heads of Konoha filed in, with Hyuga Hizashi walking alongside his brother and Inuzuka Hana walking beside her mother. All of them glanced briefly around the chamber before quietly taking seats on the left side of the room or at their respective clan chairs. Hana exchanged a few more words with the Inuzuka clan head before rising and making her way over to them. Hana-chan, is this about the meeting with Kumo? Kotetsu immediately asked as she took a seat with them. At her amused nod, he exchanged a bewildered glance with Izumo. Then what the hell are we doing here? We're Chunin. Hana shook her head. I'm not sure about the details. My mom just mentioned a summit conference with Kumogakure. But I got the Hokage's summon as well, so, she shrugged. Here I am. Footsteps at the door made them turn a third time, and the entire room rose to their feet as the Konoha elders and Hokage walked in, Ibiki, the ANBU general, and the ANBU second a few steps behind him. Sarutobi moved to the front of the room while Ibiki veered off, stopping near the back a few feet away from Anko, arms crossed and looking as imposing as ever. The 2 masked shinobi settled similarly on the right behind the Hokage's desk. Please sit, the Hokage called from the front, taking a seat himself behind his desk. This will take a while. Thank you for coming on such short notice. They all sat down again, attention focused entirely on Sarutobi now. The Hokage looked around before releasing a resigned sigh. It seems we're still waiting for 2 more though. He paused before glancing at Hayate. I heard about the good news, Hayate. Congratulations on the recovery. Hayate bowed his head respectfully. Thank you, Hokage-sama. And now that your ailment is out of the way, the Hokage snapped his fingers and an umbu appeared kneeling holding a jonin vest and uniform with update ninja license. I believe a second congratulations are in order. Sarutobi motioned for the package to be given to Hayate, whose eyes were wide with disbelief. Congratulations on your promotion, Hayate. May you continue to defend the leaf with the full force of the will of fire. Hayate had slight tears in his eyes as he accepted the garments from the umbu and bowed low to the Hokage. Thank you, Hokage-sama. I will not let you down. The old Hokage smiled and simply nodded. If Haruki kept pulling off miracles like this, the village would be unstoppable. After several more congratulation and nods of affirmation, Anko piped up from beside Hayate. Hokage-sama, do you know who gave the doctors the cure? Everyone was focused on this exchange now, even as Sarutobi inclined his head. I do, but I believe we both know he has no wish to be identified. Anko scowled, crossing her arms. Come on, Hokage-sama. Even a hint would. Leave it, Anko, Genma interrupted from his seat, senbon stuck in his mouth as usual. Whoever he is doesn't want to be known. The purple-haired kunoichi snapped her head around to study the senbon wielder suspiciously. From Hayate's other side, Yugao spoke up, interest clear in her voice. Do you know who it is, Genma? Genma shrugged. Just suspicions. Anko immediately glared. Well, let's hear them then. The Tokubetsu jounin grunted indifferently. I only have suspicions, Anko. Nothing concrete. And you wouldn't say anyway, would you? Reidu observed dryly. He knew his friend. If Genma was being tight-lipped on purpose, no amount of prying would get anything out of him. Genma smirked around his senbon and proceeded to ignore the dark glower Anko sent his way. A few of the clan heads had blatant interest on their faces, but none of them had time to raise their own questions before 2 voices, muffled but slowly coming closer, drew their attention to the doors at the far entrance. "Then know where I live? Only the Hokage knows where I live. I used to be a spy. I'm rather good at finding things out. Do you have any idea what this is going to do to my reputation? I'm going to give the Hokage a heart attack. I doubt the old man's gonna keel over just because you showed up only a few minutes late. Now stop complaining, we're here." A moment later, two shadowed figures entered the heavy wooden doors, silver and crimson gleaming against the dim candle light of the council chambers. "Hey old man," Haruki jumped inside, absently tugging his coat back in place as Kakashi followed him in. "Sorry we're late." The entire room stared, speechless for several long seconds, some at the fact that Kakashi was almost on time, others that Haruki had called the Hokage old man, and the rest that Haruki actually found where Kakashi lived. Kakashi and Haruki exchanged a glance and before turning to stare back. "It isn't that shocking, is it?" Haruki finally said, exasperation leaking into his voice. "He's still a few minutes late." Sarutobi was the first to speak, chuckling as he rose to his feet. "True, Haruki-kun, but it has never happened before." Haruki just grinned a little, nudging the Kapinin forward. Kakashi looked as bored as ever, but there was a pleased glint in his eye as he surveyed the surprised shinobi in the room. "How in the world did you do it?" Kurenai voiced, astonishment clear on her face. "We'd usually have to wait at least an hour before Kakashi turns up." Haruki shrugged, stepping further into the chamber as he glanced back at Kakashi and tipped his head towards the chairs on the left wall. Wordlessly, Kakashi sauntered forward and took a seat at the end next to Asuma. "I just went to pick him up." "Has no one ever thought to do that?" "He can't exactly avoid a meeting if someone makes sure he gets here on time." "No one knows where he lives," Genma pointed out, but Haruki caught a puzzlingly thoughtful look in the Senbon wielder's eyes, as if he was thinking about something else entirely as he studied the redhead. "Ah, well, he lives." "Haruki." The warning came from the Kapinin, and Haruki sighed and shrugged apologetically. "Somewhere in Konoha." He finished definitively. Again, the rest of the room's sweat dropped at this and was watching them with something akin to incredulous fascination, and Haruki frowned a little before glancing at the Hokage again and walked to stand next to his desk. Sarutobi just shook his head before turning to face the occupants of the room. "Alright, let's get this meeting started. There are a few S-rank decisions that are to be discussed tonight, and I have taken extra precautions to make sure the secrets discussed in here stay that way. Haruki, if you would join me please." And in that moment both the Hokage and Haruki flashed through hand seals ending in the tiger and boar seal respectively, and many streams of Fuinjutsu became visible. Combination Fuinjutsu, Zetai Chinmiku no Shiru, Combination Fuinjutsu, Seals of the Absolute Silence. The room flashed blue for a moment before the seal matrix vanished as if they were never there. Haruki turned and nodded to the Hokage with a small smile, who seemed to only acknowledge it with the slight straightening of his back. The rest of the room had a myriad of various expressions and the display of teamwork and sealing skill that was put on display in front of them. To the few that were aware of the redhead's frequent trips to the Hokage office, they could understand a bit better why. The Hokage's old teammate wore surprised faces, as they had been unaware of Hiruzen's progress in Fuinjutsu. Danzo appeared as stoic as ever. Now, thanks to the seal matrix that was just established by Haruki and myself, if any information appears outside this room of related to anything that is discussed without clearance, then it is because someone within this meeting leaked it. At this point, the Hokage stoically and sternly made eye contact with everyone in the room, though his gaze lingered on the civilian representative, to stress the seriousness of this. The unfortunate individual that does so will be found and tried for treason, understood. Everyone seemed to nod in understanding, grasping the seriousness of what was to be discussed. The Chunin members noticeable gulped but steeled themselves for what may come. The old Hokage then turned to the left side of the room to address them. "Much of what will be discussed tonight concerns many of you, and so you have been asked to witness the meeting to save time and potential leaks of information so that you are all informed. During the discussion and voting, I would ask that you remain attentive but silent until time for questions is allowed. Is this arrangement understood?" At the chorus of nods, the Sandaime turned back to the council members and seated himself in his desk. "Considering the time, I will attempt to be brief in this meeting. There are 3 things I would like to bring before the council tonight, with each item being progressively more serious." The Sandaime scanned the room to make sure he had everyone's attention and inwardly was filled with amused anticipation at what was about to come next. Haruki wasn't the only one that could scheme after all. The first matter I would like to put before the council is the installment of the new head of Konoha's Barrier Corps and newly created Sealing Corps, Konoha's newest sealing master and head of all Fuinjutsu, Kazuma Haruki. As soon as the Hokage finished his sentence, Haruki whirled around, face a mix of shock, angry, betrayal, and upon seeing the smirk on the old Kage's face, resignation. And before he could voice his objections, Hiruzen raised a hand to silence him, effective immediately. Kazama Haruki is charged with new seal development, production, armament, and the organization and instruction of the new Sealing Corps. He is the head and primary key holder of the barrier field, when not on missions, and furthermore is restricted from going on anything less than an A-rank mission and given elite jonin status and a seat on the department council. I'm sure Haruki-kun and I will further establish and define his duties in these areas at later dates. Meanwhile, in the enraged redhead's mind, he was using every possible curse and mental barb he can on the old Hokage, even imagining him strangling the old man. That the Kyuubi blushes. Keep calm, Kit. The old monkey basically promised to explain later. At least hear him out. This could be good for us. It gives you legitimacy and authority within the village you can use. Yeah, but he didn't have to surprise me with it, damn it. And what about laying low and not drawing attention to myself? Think of it this way, Kit, if you weren't surprised by the proposal, the council would think foul play and may not approve the recommendation. Realizing the fox had a point, the redhead just glowered and decided to kill the old man later in private. The room was silent as everyone digested the information, including Haruki's rather obvious reaction. It was after a few moments that Koharu spoke up. And on what grounds would you offer such praise and responsibility to this jonin? You must understand, Hokage-sama, that while we are indeed in need of such a specialist, since Jiraiya refuses to do so and he is useful as our spy master, we need proof more than your previous demonstration to grant such authority to anyone with so little background information. Before the Hokage had a chance to reply, it was Hayashi Hyuga that began speaking. I for one can testify to Haruki-san's skill in Fuinjutsu. As most of you know, Haruki was crucial in not only finding and returning my brother to us, but in doing so had to identify and defeat a life suppression seal without harming my brother. After further inquiry of my own, I discovered that this is considered a level 7 seal in the field. A rather impressive accomplishment. When discussing the details of how to convince Kyumo of my brother's escape, Haruki was able to explain to me in basic simple terms how the seal operated. Another impressive feat. I give Haruki-san my full recommendation. Once again, before the Hokage could speak, Shikaku spoke up with a lazy drawl. Though it is troublesome to discuss, I too give my backing to this appointment. When Haruki defeated me in shogi, he was able to identify and correct a chakra capacity identifier made by the Yondaime himself. I believe I can safely assume that this is adequate support for both his intelligence as well as his Fujitsu skills. At this point, everyone is looking at the redhead, ranging from concealed interest to open gaping. Haruki did his best to resist fidgeting but couldn't completely stop the blush from rising to his face. He felt like an experiment under observation. Once again the Hokage made to speak. If he was irritated by the interruptions, he didn't show it. Thank you, Shikaku-sama, Hayashi-sama. Are there any more testimonies to be presented? After his question there was silence for a moment, and Haruki was thankful that no one seemed to have more to say, before a small cough came from the far left of the room. The attention of the room shifted as nervous frustration built inside the redhead as the copy ninja raised a hand from his slouched, seemingly disinterested position. If the council will permit, I have testimony to offer on the matter of Haruki's sealing skill. At seeing the nod from the Hokage, the copy ninja stood and calmly walked to the center of the room to address the council, ignoring the glare of daggers from the redhead. In addition to these testimonies, I would also like to add that Haruki is currently responsible for the seal security of Naruto Uzumaki's home as well as Naruto's own education in the art. I witnessed the installation of the sealing defenses and am aware of their effects. During the installation, Haruki placed level 7 and 8 sealing matrices in addition to a dozen or so smaller lower-level matrices onto the wall with chakra alone. I know of no one else with that level of skill. Having said his piece, Kakashi walked back his seat while the rest of the room digested the information. Some of the council members looked like they wanted to comment on Haruki's involvement with Naruto, but before they could, the Hokage headed them off. Other testimony? Kurenai-chan, the leader of Team 8, stood with soft smile and walked toward the center of the room. The occupants of which curious as to what interaction she could have had to offer anything. Haruki's face was ridged and blank. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Yesterday during Team 8's training session, Haruki assisted and trained them for the day. During his exercise, he and I were to remain hidden from the team as they sought us out. During this time, using nothing but wind and chakra, Haruki formed an invisible seal that completely blocked the Byakugan. At this point everyone stiffened as Hayashi and Hizashi snapped their shocked gaze to the redhead, who refused to make eye contact. I do not know the level of the seal this is, but I can imagine it takes extreme amounts of skill to accomplish this. At this revelation all but the Hokage seemed surprised and shocked. Asuma couldn't pick his jaw up off the floor. Though probably the most important reaction was from the Hyuga clan head. There was a mixture of caution and intrigue, and in a rare moment of transparency the mechanical workings of the plans being forged could be seen. To what end, however, no one could guess. The Hokage paused here seemingly for effect. The last piece of evidence I would like to submit is probably the crowning jewel to Haruki's feats, if they only knew, and the reason why I'm not having him take Jiraiya's place as our spy master despite his considerable skill in the art. At this point Haruki recognized what was next and just closed his eyes in resignation. Haruki countered, defeated, and removed Orochimaru's curse seal. This time the room erupted. Even Danzo's eye widened and locked with Hiruzen's as the rest of the council and unknowing guests exclaimed and threw out demands of how, when, and for proof. The two seemed to be having their own silent yet intricate conversation in the midst of the chaos. Without any prompting, Anko appeared in the middle of the room, shoulders bare, with the biggest sadistic smile she could muster. Everyone's eyes locked on where they knew the cursed mark would be except Danzo. Troublesome, muttered Shikaku before continuing louder. This changes everything. Once again the Hokage spoke before any more comments or questions could be raised. I will now call for a vote on the confirmation of my appointment and creation. Around the table each nodded before they began with Choza. Choza Akimichi, head of the Akimichi clan, I vote yes. Inochi Yamanaka, head of the Yamanaka clan, I vote yes. Shikaka Nara clan head, it's troublesome but I vote yes. Shibi Aburama, head of the Aburama clan, his skill is undeniable, therefore logic dictates he is best for the position. I vote yes. Soma Izunaka, head of the Izunaka clan, yeah, he can do it. Hayashi Hyuga, head of the Hyuga clan, I agree with the Hokage's judgment of Haruki's skill. Tojiro Modosai, civilian representative to the council, I vote yes. Hamura Mitokado, village elder, I vote yes. Koharu Yudatane, village elder, I vote no. At this the majority of the room became confused. What more could she want? It's not a question of his skill but giving a relatively newly public shinobi such responsibility. I understand Hokage-sama's confidence in him, but it is my job as an elder to voice my own concerns even if they will make little difference. Leave it to the grandma to have to be the sensible one. Nodding in acknowledgement, the Hokage made to speak before he was interrupted by a rather loud cough. Heads turned to Danzo and the man's blank countenance. I believe I still have to cast my vote, Hokage-san. Yes, of course. My apologies. Danzo seemed to ignore this as he began. I, Shiruma Danzo, head of the Shiruma clan and village elder, vote in favor of the measure. This took most by surprise and made others, especially Haruki, narrowed their eyes at the Warhawk. What is he up to? The Hokage, however, took it in stride and did not react to the unusual display at all. Thank you, Elder Danzo. Let all who are here bear witness to Haruki's new title and position. The matter concerning the cursed mark is an S-rank secret. Haruki, you will meet me later to discuss your new position more fully. At seeing the redhead's tight nod, he continued. Now on to the second piece of business. He began drawing everyone's attention back to him. I'm sure everyone realizes that we are here to discuss the summit conference with Kimogakure, where I and the Raikage will discuss reparations. Before we start discussion on what they will be though, some of you still need to be filled in on the real details of what brought us to this point in the first place. He gestured to the jonin next to him. As most, if not all of you know, this is Kazama Haruki. He is the one responsible for bringing back Hyuga Hizashi. The next 10 minutes were spent giving a semi-detailed explanation of the circumstances surrounding the Hyuga clan head's brother as Haruki stood motionless under the other shinobi's sharp gazes, features blank. When Sarutobi finished, there were varied expressions on each of the room's occupants' faces. The clan heads and Hizashi already knew, but the other half of the room hadn't and was now staring at Haruki with everything from thoughtfulness to amazement. So this is why no one really seems to know him? Kotetsu whispered to Izumo. He hasn't been back in 8 years? Haruki seemed to have heard them, inclined his head, ignoring the part of his mind that admonished him for lying. It was necessary, and he didn't have time to indulge in his conscience at the moment. That's amazing, Yugao remarked quietly, respect evident in her words. You managed to corner Kumo in less than 2 weeks and they won't even be able to accuse us of anything in this. The level of skill required to pull off such a mission. Yes, Sarutobi agreed, having heard the ANBU. Which brings us back to the point of this meeting. The conference with Kumo will consist of myself, a Hyuga representative, and 5 escorts. Hayashi, Hizashi, and Haruki will become, of course, as well as Shibi Aburama and Tsumizunaka will accompany me and... The old Hokage turned to the left of the room and paused briefly. Asuma blinked, mildly startled, but straightened and nodded without pause. The rest of you are here to be aware of the situation and on alert while we are gone. There was a general round of nods from the left side of the room. Yugao and Heiei, Kakashi and Enko will be on standby as the support team should any be need as well. Mild surprise flashed across Heiei's face, but he nodded a moment after Yugao inclined her head. The copynin acknowledged this with a single nod, though his visible eye slid over to the red-haired Jounin for a brief moment, calculating behind the lazy perusal. Enko beamed at the honor, still excited from her recent promotion. The rest of you will remain in Konoha on standby in case Kumo tries anything while I am away and more reinforcements are needed. Shikaku, you will function in my office with the elders until I return. Seeing the Nara nod as this was the usual arrangement, Sarutobi continued before gesturing to Haruki again. The redhead walked forward and laid a scroll before each council member, which they began opening and reading. Now, in addition to the list of things we will request from Como besides a larger mission share from border nations, better trade rights and some techniques unique to Como, Haruki and I came up with a unique request which I think would be crucial to Konoha's future security. I'll let him explain. Haruki nodded and took a step back, steadying the mild stir of apprehension in his stomach with relative ease. He had long since gotten used to talking in front of crowds. Right, he started, noting the attentiveness in every shinobi's expression. I'm sure you all know Uzumaki Naruto. There was a rush of murmurs around the room before Tsum spoke up. He's the demon brat, isn't? The kunoichi abruptly cut herself off when cerulean eyes froze over and pinned her with an icy stare. From behind her, Kakashi's typical lazy drawl wasn't so lazy anymore. There was just the slightest edge of steel underlying his voice as he spoke. Ma, Tsum, that demon brat is my student. Kakashi voiced from the side of the room. It was strange, a detached part of Tsum's mind thought. Sharingan no Kakashi was famed for his detached nonchalance and cool head in any situation and often showed nothing but disinterest in everything not directly related to the immediate safety of Konoha. The man was hard-pressed to care about anything on a good day. And yet, here he was, defending one of his students for something Tsum had said that she hadn't even meant as an insult. She wondered if Haruki had anything to do with this change. That's not what I meant, she snapped back, mostly at Kakashi because Haruki wasn't even frowning and she could already feel the chill trickling down her spine. She almost pitied any poor fool who pissed him off enough to receive the full brunt of that glare. I've got nothing against the kid. I can tell a child from a demon, Hitaki. Tsum breathed an inward sigh of relief when Kakashi relaxed enough to eye-smile an almost apology at her. She shot an irritated glare back before turning to Haruki again to check his expression. The frigid stare was gone, replaced by his typically neutral expression again. What about him then? She asked, not quite able to hide a scowl from surfacing on her face. Haruki had the decency to look apologetic for a brief moment and Tsum settled back down with a huff. Well then, Haruki continued, his gaze sweeping around the room. As you know, Naruto is the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. But right now, all he knows is why this village hates him so much. Cerulean darkened to indigo as he spoke. He doesn't understand the Kyuubi's power, nor does he realize how strong he can become if he manages to work together with the fox. Wait, Inoichi straightened from his seat, something like alarm flashing across his face. We don't want Naruto to use that demon fox's power. Why not? Haruki immediately countered, and several in the chamber noted the way his voice edged with a bitter coldness and shoulders squared, as if preparing for battle. The Kyuubi's chakra is just another source of strength one can use. The Uchiha have their Sharingan, the Hyuga have their Byakugan, the Aburame have their Kakaichu, the Inuzuka have their dogs. If nothing else, the Kyuubi is an ace for the village, being the strongest Biju. That is the point of the Jinchuriki system, is it not? Weapons of mass destruction as deterrents from war. The challenge and source of the primary fear of Jinchuriki is that most villages are unable to use their Jinchuriki as little more than chaos bombs that they set off and just point in the general direction of the enemy, hoping that more of their enemy's assets will be destroyed than their own. This is something we should not continue to practice. However, control takes years of practice and trust built up. Alone, there is likely to be dangerous error. After training though, working together, Naruto and the Kyuubi could become an unstoppable force. Most of the older shinobi were understanding of his analysis, though it caught their attention when he spoke of the result with such conviction. Trust built? Inochi frowned, confused. Yes, trust. Between Naruto and the Kyuubi, Haruki answered shortly, leaving half the room looking nonplussed. If Naruto can work together with the fox, his potential would increase even more and Konoha would become that much stronger. The Kyuubi tried to destroy Konoha 12 years ago, Tsum cut in flatly, eyes narrowed. I've got nothing against the brat, my own son is friends with him, but who knows what that monster would do if he could influence the boy. Haruki opened his mouth before closing it again, mentally calming Kurama as growls resonated in his mindscape. They don't know yet, he reminded the fox. Then tell them. This is degrading. We can't. It's too soon. You know that. The fox just huffed. Well, the least you could do is defend our honor. All right, Haruki said aloud, glancing sideways at the Hokage. I think I'll have to go further back and tell you something else then. Old man, you remember what I said about what was really behind the Kyuubi attack? Sarutobi nodded thoughtfully as his gaze swept over the occupants of the room. He had been told of the real mastermind behind several disasters hitting Konoha, but he suspected that there was still something Haruki was holding back from him. But the former Hokage had said nothing more on the subject, so Sarutobi had not pushed. He trusted Haruki to tell him when he needed to know. Tell them. But this is an S-class secret. Word of this must not get out. There was a general round of nods as the Chunin shifted uncertainly, glancing at each other. Why exactly were they here again? They wouldn't tell anyone of anything they heard here today, but it was rare for someone below Jonin to be privy to top-secret information. Okay, Haruki nodded decisively. It is well understood among those in of the higher levels of the sealing community that the Biju have personalities. Minds, so to speak. Capable of reasoning and patterned behaviors. Now it is not popular to state this, as most people prefer to view them as balls of mindless malevolent power. Here Haruki paused and surveyed the room, and seeing he had everyone's rapt attention continued. The proof this not the case lies in what it takes to seal a Biju in the first place. Every successful Fuinjutsu used to seal Biju has a heavy Yin chakra component. Usually with one part mirroring or cataloging the spiritual imprint of what, or rather who, is being sealed, and the other anchoring the personhood of the thing. The fact that such pieces among others are needed demonstrated the Biju's rationale. We can only conclude therefore that there is someone that can control or manipulate Biju. Someone as powerful as Uchiha Madara. There were several sharp intakes of breath as all the clan heads glanced sharply at one another. Shikaku kept his gaze firmly on the red-haired Jounin. He had already heard about the events of the Kyuubi attack from Haruki when they had gone out for dinner the other night. He knew the edited story and he agreed with Haruki. It was far too early to disclose the contents of what really happened that night, especially with all the attention Haruki already had in trying to explain how he knew S-class secrets even the council didn't know. And now we know what organization he's hiding in. Akatsuki. Jiraiya-sama is attempting to learn more about them as we speak. From what we can tell, the culprit is still at large. Uchiha Madara was the clan head of the Uchiha clan during the Shodame's reign, right? Heiate put in slowly to his own group. He helped found Konoha, but he betrayed it in the end. He and the Shodame fought at the Valley of the End and he was killed in the battle, wasn't he? It couldn't have been him, and the Yondaime defeated and killed whomever the other guy was that night, didn't he? No, Haruki said, carefully remaining vague of which fact he was referring to. He observed the shock that appeared on several shinobi's faces, but there were a few who only looked pensively thoughtful, as if they had suspected this all along. The man from that night survived that battle. Barely, but he did, and he's still around today. Needless to say, Konoha isn't his favorite village at the moment. Whoever he is has the ability to control the Kyuubi and use him in battle. It was he who forced him to attack Konoha all those years ago, it was not Kyuubi's choice. By the time the Yondaime managed to stop the attacker, the Kyuubi was likely too angry to stop. There was never the confirmation of a kill, and the target of this organization seems to have Biju on the list. Even though they are not making their move, our Jinchuriki is unprepared to use his Biju as an asset. It is this I seek to change and use Kyumo to do it, drawing everyone's attention back to the issue at hand. Akatsuki could be discussed later. Absently, twitching the senbon in his mouth, Genma glanced wryly at his friends. They looked almost catatonic with shock. Then again, he wasn't doing much better. Whatever he had been expecting in the meeting today, it was not this. In his mind, he had imagined the briefing to be something along the lines of "We will be meeting with Kyumo, get your gear together, meet at the main gates, dismissed." Judging by most of the clan heads' expressions, they hadn't been expecting this either. He turned back to the front of the room, cocking his head to observe the red-haired Jonin standing calmly beside the Hokage. Surely an infiltration mission to Kyumo, no matter how long, wouldn't result in uncovering something of this magnitude, so how did Haruki know? He wanted to ask, but held his tongue. There was something off about Haruki's background, and he wasn't sure if the questions he wanted to voice would put him in a difficult position. As it turned out, Genma needn't have worried. Someone else posed the question before he could contemplate it any further. "Wait, you got all this in an infiltration mission to Kyumo?" Tsum demanded, not understanding the heavy frown that Shikaku suddenly directed her way. "Does that mean they know this stuff?" No, Haruki shook his head. "I'm good at finding things out. I know their Jinchuriki, and I've been vigilant to any threats involving Jinchuriki and Konoha. This lead me to Akatsuki, which lead me to this information. Though frankly every village should be on the lookout." It was clear that Tsum was not satisfied with this answer, but Shikaku spoke up before she could probe further, focusing everyone's attention back to the main point. "Then we know to keep an eye out for Uchiha Madara, or at least someone like him, as well as other members of this group." "But what does the Kyuubi and Naruto have to do with the conference with Kyumo?" Haruki nodded. To answer further answered Tsum-san's concern. "In the case of Naruto Uzumaki's, the layered seals prevent the Kyuubi from possessing or influence him. His unique seals are of note because they only hold back and drain half of the Kyuubi's power. The yang half, to be precise. This is important, one, because of which abilities will be granted to him, and two, because of what will happen when Naruto Uzumaki dies. Because the yin half of the Kyuubi would remain sealed, the yang half could not start the reformation process that the Biju are famous for 9 years later. The fox no doubt knows this. Therefore, in attempt to maintain survival until its other half becomes unsealed or is released, the Kyuubi will do what it can to stay alive. He will help Naruto." The last part was said with such conviction the few deeper-thinking members of those present looked at the redhead curiously as they thought over his analysis. The Kyuubi is not just a mindless beast. He has his own thoughts and, in his right mind, would only attack places where human malice has collected and festered, since it is rumored that one of his abilities is to detect negative emotions. If Naruto gets in touch with the fox, Kyuubi could be convinced to work together with Naruto. And if that happens, someone will have to teach him how to wield the Kyuubi's chakra. That's where Kyumo comes in. During the conference, we will most likely agree to a diplomat from Kyumo to come live in Konoha as a sign of continued peace between our two villages. Haruki withdrew 2 scrolls and unraveled them, showing the audience a depiction of the 2 shinobi he was about to introduce. This, he held up the scroll in his right hand, is the Reikich's adoptive brother, Killer B. I believe he's powerful enough to be ANBU bordering Kage level, but he is named the Guardian of Kyumogakure since, in addition to being their Kage's family, he is also the Jinchuriki of Gyuki, the Hachibi. Ignoring the startled gasps from his captivated listeners, Haruki held up the scroll in his left hand. "And this is Ni Yujito, a Jonin-level kunoichi, though recently promoted, and a good strategist, as well as one of the Reikich's most trusted. She's the Jinchuriki of Matatabi, the Nibi." Haruki paused and scanned the room, wondering if that had been one too many surprises in the last half hour. 2 Jinchuriki. Choza finally voiced faintly. "But, we thought the 2 tails was lost." Haruki shrugged, rolling up the scrolls again. "Kyumo doesn't go around proclaiming it to the world, though they don't exactly hide it either. And it isn't as if either of them uses their Biju's chakra every time they enter a fight. They're both quite strong on their own. One of them can train Naruto in the beginning steps of contacting Kyuubi. Are you saying that they can fully control their Biju's chakra?" Inoichi inquired, blue-green gaze unwavering as he stared back at Haruki. Haruki nodded. "Very well too. Both of them are quite adept at working together with their Biju." A mirthless crooked smile flitted across his features. "They are 2 of their village's most prized shinobi, Kyumo's pride, you could say." The red-haired Jonin's tone wasn't quite accusing, more reproachful than anything else, but several of them shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Haruki ignored this and focused on the gathered clan heads instead. This is our plan to get the edge and training Naruto needs while stabilizing relations with Komo, both by having an emissary and by that emissary being one of their precious Jinchuriki. A short silence followed and Haruki forced himself to stay still. It wouldn't do to look too eager. I agree to this plan, Shikaku suddenly spoke up, cutting the tension in the air. Inoichi and Chuza both turned to blink at him, mildly startled. It wasn't like the Jonin commander to acquiesce so easily without going over everything several times first. Shikaku paid them no mind, continuing evenly, if Naruto can fully harness the Kyuubi's power, it would be beneficial to Konoha, and perhaps even turn the people's views of him to something more positive. Though I believe Naruto to be quite loyal to this village, what with his eagerness to become a Konoha shinobi, having almost the entire population against him is a disservice to both him and ourselves, not to mention it is downright shameful to treat the boy so badly when he is holding back the Kyuubi for us. And whether we like it or not, the fox, though dormant, could one day break free of its seal. Since that is a possibility, I'd much rather have the fox on our side than against us. Thoughtful murmurs swept the room as Haruki shot the Nara head a discreet look of thanks. Shikaku gazed back calmly, tilting his head in a minuscule nod. He had meant what he said 2 nights ago, he wouldn't leave the time traveler to fend for himself anymore. Although he would have to pull the redhead aside later and maybe lecture him a bit about giving him the full details before telling anyone else. He could have come up with an even stronger defense had he had time. Well, if that's the case, I agree with Shikaku, Inoichi nodded at Haruki. I'd much rather fight beside him than against him if it comes to that. And the boy deserves a break from the things the villagers say. Maybe if they see that he can work with the Kyuubi, they'll be more open to his presence in Konoha. Chuza wasn't far behind as he nodded in agreement. It was widely known and accepted that 1 concession from their clans really meant 3, and if this didn't happen it was significant. Agreed. Konoha would be much stronger with a Biju on our side, and Naruto-kun would benefit from this as well. Near the back, Hayashi glanced at his twin, raising a questioning eyebrow. He had already accepted that Hizashi knew something about Haruki that he didn't, like how the Jonin seemed to know so many things that he really shouldn't. He didn't believe for a moment that Haruki had just picked it up by doing a little digging, and so he usually turned to his brother in cases like this. It sounds like a good plan, he commented in a low voice as he studied Hizashi's expression. What do you think? Hizashi just smiled and inclined his head. I think it is a good plan as well. Naruto working with the Kyuubi would greatly benefit Konoha. Hayashi nodded, shooting an exasperated look at his twin for the unhelpful agreement. He had been hoping for a hint to the mystery surrounding Haruki, at the very least. Turning to face forward again, he spoke up, I agree as well. But whoever is chosen should be closely watched. Of course, Haruki nodded. That would go for anyone coming to the village as a diplomatic envoy. Some listened to the other clan heads' agreement before glancing impatiently at Shibi. Well? She asked in a lowered voice. What do you think? Shibi glanced sidelong at his former teammate and raised an eyebrow. Some rolled her eyes. Sometimes, she wondered when she had managed to pick up enough patience to dissect an Aburame's silent speech. A raised right eyebrow alone had 36 different meanings she had counted. This one meant, why are you asking me? Because I think it's a good idea, but I'm not just gonna pitch headfirst into this like everyone else is doing today, some muttered back. I mean, since when does that stick-up his ass Hyuga agree so easily to anything? This time, Shibi frowned at her, which had 52 different meanings, a minute crease in his brow that was only noticeable to someone looking for it. Some huffed in irritation. You got used to my language a long time ago. Concentrate on the important thing here, Shibi. Shibi finally sighed, and even Sum had lost count of how many meanings that could amount to. She had given up after 94 and had simply memorized the sounds instead and said curtly, I agree, it sounds advantageous to Konohagakure. My concern is having a fully capable Jinchuriki in the village that could unleash themselves whenever they wanted, and there are very few currently that could stop them. Sum nodded, suppressing a sigh of her own as she turned back to the front. Personally, she had no objections, and if even Shibi disagreed, she would support this plan fully. The brat needed to be trained. But still, there was something bigger here. Something someone in the room must know and wasn't telling, and Haruki was smack in the middle of it. I agree too, she called out bluntly. But I'd like a general idea of each one of them before deciding who to pick. Haruki nodded, mentally releasing a relieved sigh. Sum and Shibi had been his biggest worries. He hadn't interacted with them very much in this timeline and wasn't sure if his plan would be enough to put aside the suspicions that he knew they both had of him. With Tsum's vote the measure would pass. Great. Then, Haruki turned to look at Kakashi. We'd need to work out some sort of deal with Kumo first, and in this case, Kakashi would get the last word in Naruto's training. The Kapinin lifted an eyebrow at this, gaze flickering briefly to the Hokage and then moving on to focus on Shikaku before returning to Haruki again. He had been annoyed when a spark of betrayal had stirred inside him after catching the unsurprised expression on the Nara head's face once Haruki had revealed the mastermind behind the Kyuubi attack, as well as the short exchange between them after Shikaku had defended the redhead's plan, and it was still nagging insistently at the back of his mind right now. With hidden irritation, he shoved it down and concentrated on the matter at hand. What did it matter if Haruki had told Shikaku first anyway? It certainly didn't concern him. A part of him just wanted to know who had been the cause of his sensei's death, and it hurt not being the first told. In all likelihood the Nara head had probably finally caught up to the redhead and had managed to worm a straight answer out of Haruki, which likely lead to a briefing he was unaware of. Whoever trains Naruto will have to do it while I'm there as well, he said instead, voice light. And my other two students will have to know about Naruto's circumstances too. Haruki nodded immediately. Of course, but whether or not you tell them about the Kyuubi should be up to Naruto. He should be the one to choose whether or not they should know. Kakashi inclined his head in acquiescence. That sounds fine. I'll take it up with him after the conference. Haruki nodded again. His younger counterpart would most likely want his teammates to know, nervous though he'd be, but he was sure both Sakura and Sasuke would take it in stride. Alright then, moving on, Haruki turned back to the crowd in general. I'll give you an overview of Killer Bee first. He pulled out a small booklet that he had spent a few hours filling up with all the things he could remember about the allies and enemies he had had in his former life. Killer Bee is very proud of his own power, so the first thing to remember during the summit is to not insult his Biju. Like Naruto can be at times, Killer Bee can be quite cocky and stubborn, especially in terms of his own strength, and he demands respect from others and asks to be called Jinchuriki-sama and his Biju be called Hachibi-sama. Haruki paused and glanced up. The entire room looked to be in a unified state of incredulity. Smothering laughter, he continued his summarization. He has a special way of expressing his pride through song, more specifically in rap style. Oh, and he'll even write his rhymes in the middle of a fight, or during an important meeting, even if they're no good, which is usually the case, so just go along with it. Haruki looked up again. The incredulity had turned into the beginnings of traumatized disbelief. Kakashi was glancing between the booklet Haruki was reading out of Engai. The taijutsu specialist was the only one who seemed to be completely at ease with Killer Bee's description. Still trying not to snicker, Haruki returned to his report. Bee doesn't respect anyone who makes fun of rap or his lyrics, so in other words, don't laugh, or mouth off to him, or do anything to offend him if you want to work out a deal to bring him back to Konoha. For his battle skills, he's not the type of person to work with strategies with other people. He was already completing missions that were supposed to be assigned for both him and his brother, without the Raikage's knowledge. The only person Bee will listen to is the Raikage, since he's the only one able to keep him in check. Bee knows talent when he sees it though, and he respects those with it. A good example would be his fellow Kumo Jinchuriki, Yujito. He really looks up to her for her abilities. Bee has a very close relationship with his older brother, and the reason behind him becoming a Jinchuriki in the first place was for the sake of the Raikage. He didn't complain, and he's always cheerful and determined, much like Naruto is. However, even though he sounds pretty hot-headed, when someone close to him is in danger, he has no qualms about putting himself at risk to save them, if necessary. As far as I know, he has a pretty good relationship with Gyuki. They don't have any problems working with each other, and both of them are damn strong by themselves. As far as abilities go, Bee's good at taijutsu and kenjutsu, and he has the ability to flow lightning-natured chakra through his blades to increase their cutting power. Haruki stopped for a moment. He was very familiar with Bee's skills, but he wasn't quite sure if they reached the level he knew them to be yet. Never underestimate his ability with Raitun techniques, he said at last. He's a monster with them. He scanned his book. He has full control over his Biju, and he's the only living Jinchuriki who can retain his full Biju form indefinitely. He paused again, hesitating for a moment. Though when I say control, Haruki clarified. Bee and Gyuki are more like partners than anything else, which makes them even stronger in battle. Anyway, Bee's also kind and compassionate, so he'd probably make a pretty good teacher for Naruto if we go with him. Haruki looked up once more as he finished, studying his audience for a reaction. Most looked a little stunned at the summary of Killer Bee's abilities, but surprisingly, it was Kakashi who spoke first. So basically, Kakashi said in an oddly neutral voice. This Killer Bee, with his rap and lyrics and whatever else he's got, is the Mato guy of Kimogakure. It wasn't a question, but Haruki contemplated it for a moment before nodding somewhat cautiously. He supposed, in terms of, well, eccentricities, that was true. I guess so, yeah, I see. Kakashi raised one hand, deadpanning. I don't care who she is, I vote for the woman. This set off an immediate chain reaction. Beside him, both Asuma and Kurenai raised their hands as well and chorused, seconded. Us too. Yugao, Hayate, Kotetsu, Izumo, Anko, Reidu, and Hana's hands all shot up. There was a distinct pause as everyone blinked. Guy looked mildly offended. I think Killer Bee-san is extremely youthful, he announced, much to the visible annoyance of Kakashi. I would not mind such youthfulness in Konoha. You wouldn't, Kurenai sighed. What does the council think? Inoichi chuckled but turned back to Haruki. Let's hear about the other one first. Haruki nodded and flipped a few pages. Right, Niyujito, she's a hard worker, proud, wise, and a courageous kunoichi. I hear she's also firm and decisive in battle, and thoughtful of her teammates as well. She's younger than Killer Bee but, like I said before, he looks up to her for her skills. She's a decent strategist, and better at close-ranged combat. Because of the Nibi, she can grow her fingernails and toenails into claws, and she uses fire against her enemies very efficiently. She has the ability to fully transform into the Nibi while keeping her mind, and while she doesn't have complete control over Matatabi, she can control the transformation and how much of the Nibi's chakra she wants to use. Clapping his book closed, Haruki scanned the room. Obviously, I don't have as much on her as I do Killer Bee, but from what I gathered, she sounds like a pretty good candidate as well. She sounds like a good all-rounder, Shikaka commented. Killer Bee may be very strong, but he sounds like more of an offensive type, and we want someone strong, not overly strong, some agreed. Plus we don't want something to happen to him and have the raikage at our doorstep. This Yujito sounds like the best option. Murmurs swept both groups as they discussed amongst themselves groups while the Hokage glanced at Haruki. Who do you want here? Haruki shrugged, making sure to keep his voice low enough so not to be overheard. I don't really mind either one. Naruto would probably butt heads with Killer Bee at first, but then again, he butts heads with most new people. Yujito's the calmer of the two though, and Bee is. He trailed off, eyes glazing over a little as memories with that particular Jinchuriki surfaced. Sarutobi frowned a little with concern. You two were friends? Haruki stirred, shrugging again. Allies, teacher, friends, family, we were on pretty good terms to say the least. His mouth twisted a little. He saved my life. Sarutobi observed him for a few seconds. He sounds like a good man. Haruki scoffed. Drove me crazy sometimes. And he was crazy, jumping in front of. He cut himself off before his shoulders slumped a little. He died, to save me, he finished lamely. Sarutobi said nothing. There really was nothing to say. It wasn't anyone's fault if one ninja died to save another, but there would always be a part of the survivor that would never let go of the guilt that came with it. We've agreed on Niyujito, Shikaku announced. She seems more disciplined than Killer Bee as well, which would probably be good for Naruto. Haruki quirked an inquiring eyebrow at this. What exactly are you implying here? Eyes could laugh, and Haruki knew the Nara head was mocking him right now. With a mental snort, Haruki straightened and nodded. Alright then, I'm finished here. Old man, I will now call for a vote on the treaty and talks with Komo. Around the table each nodded before they began with Choza. Choza Akimichi, head of the Akimichi clan, I vote yes. Inochi Yamanaka, head of the Yamanaka clan, I vote yes. Shikaka Nara, Nara clan head, it's troublesome but I vote yes. Shibi Aburama, head of the Aburama clan, I vote no. Tsuma Izunaka, head of the Izunaka clan, agree to the conditions. Hayashi Hyuga, head of the Hyuga clan, I agree, with obvious restrictions and depending on the results of the talks. Tojiro Motosai, civilian representative to the council, I vote no on the grounds that the Kyubi could be accidentally released. Haruma Mitokado, village elder, I vote no on the grounds that there are not enough seal masters to keep the Jinchuriki in check. Koharu Yudatane, village elder, I vote no on the grounds that having a foreign Jinchuriki here would be a risk we do not need to take. I, Shiruma Danzo, head of the Shiruma clan and village elder, vote in favor of the measure. Sarutobi stepped forward again. The summit conference will be held a week and a half from now at 9 in the morning, in the forested area outside of Yugakure. I expect those who are coming to be at the village gates by 5, and those who aren't to be in position at that time as well. He paused and the occupants of the chamber took this as a cue to nod. Sarutobi continued, I will also need a sweep patrol to head out in front a few days ahead of the rest of us. Kyomo will likely do the same. Any volunteers? I'll do it, Haruki offered immediately. He didn't know what kind of reaction he would have when he saw B and Yujito again. Better to catch sight of them first without a group of ninja around him. Sarutobi nodded, expecting as much. Pick someone to go with you, Haruki. None the clan heads though. Haruki's gaze, to his belated puzzlement, jumped straight to Kakashi before Sarutobi had even finished talking, eyes already asking before he could open his mouth. He blinked when he thought he caught a pleased glint flash through Kakashi's lone eye. Well? Haruki prompted more grumpily than he had intended. Distantly, he noted that the entire room had leaned forward with interest again. Kakashi seemed to ponder his request before smiling at him and holding out a hand. Haruki understood instantly and scowled. No. Kakashi didn't look all that concerned, lowering his hand again. Then no, he countered easily. Haruki scoffed, crossing his arms. I don't need you to come with me. I could take Asuma then. Asuma put up his hands, already wary. Oh no, I'm not getting into whatever this is. Kakashi's smirk widened behind his mask. Well then, it looks like you don't have much of a choice. Haruki's scowl deepened. This is blackmail, Kakashi snorted. That's rich, coming from you. You've been doing the same thing for days. Sacrifice is good for the soul. Haruki retorted crossly. I could say the same thing, Kakashi said cheerfully. Haruki glowered at him. Seconds ticked by as the two ninja waited in a stalemate. The rest of the room waited to see who would capitulate. Finally, Haruki sighed and Kakashi's expression turned triumphant. He raised his hand again. Fine, Haruki pulled out an orange book from his vest, much to the astonishment of everyone watching. But if you pull this or any other volume out at any time during the summit, I'll show you just how creative my seals can get. Kakashi huffed but nodded reluctantly. Deal. I'll even leave it at home. He gleefully tucked his precious Ika away before turning to a bemused-looking Sarutobi. So, Haruki and I for scouting 2 days before. When should we leave? Sarutobi shook his head, half amused, half exasperated. Since when did Hatake Kakashi act so childishly? 4:30. Report back the next day. Kakashi inclined his head along with Haruki and retook his seat. The old Hokage turned back to the council to finish their final piece of business. He knew the first attempt would likely fail and he knew why. He also had a pretty good idea how to fix it. Haruki was going to want to kill him by the end of the night, and he was going to get the chance. On to our last piece of business, I'll be straight to the point. Sarutobi glanced around the room, expression turning the most serious it had been the entire meeting. I plan to have Haruki at least assist or carry out the assassination of the Yondaime Mizuki Jigura. Silence. And it continued for several minutes. The entire room seemed to be processing the implications of what had just been said. While they were processing, as more and more emotions and thoughts passed along their faces, the Hokage pulled out a mission scroll and unrolled the bottom. He then pulled out the Hokage stamp, approved the mission and signed it. Rolling the mission scroll back up, he handed it to Haruki before folding his hands and staring at the council's shocked and confused expression. Before anyone spoke, he asked Haruki without looking away from them, "Do you accept this mission?" Haruki, without looking at the scroll, bowed his head. "Hi Hokage-sama." Hiruzen then addressed the council as Haruki passed out a second set of incredibly thick scrolls. What is being placed in front of you is the compilation of the reports, issues, economic effects, political analysis and spy reports of all regions where Konoha has been affected by Kirigakure and the current infighting there. The amount of support we gain from their instability is outweighed by their problems, missing ninja count, and trade impacts. This can no longer be ignored. I have just approved one of the few jonin we have capable of fighting Jinchuriki, Haruki, to assist the rebellion there in the elimination of the Mizuki before the next Chunin exams. His efforts will be meaningless if this is not followed with a treaty and alliance between us and the new controlling faction of Kiri, the Bloodline Rebels. In particular the leader, Mei Terumi. Haruki has contacts within the rebellion and due to his recent mission also happens to be without any files. So, should the worst happen it will not be traced to Konoha. I will not risk a war. Therefore, it is now in the hands of the council if Haruki gets any support or not. Without an approved treaty the rebellion is not likely to assist him and may target him as well, and even if they don't they gain far fewer benefits from his mission. I will now give you some time to read through then copy of the proposed treaty included in the scrolls after the report. Utter silence. No one said a word as they read carefully the reports and treaty. Meanwhile the witnesses on the side of the room didn't know what to think. The Chunin were shifting nervously among themselves trying to distract their minds to the implications of the council's decision. The Jonin were grim as they accepted the reality of what was happening in front of them but couldn't help but wonder about why. Not why really, because they knew why. There was a threat to the village, an opportunity presented itself for them to eliminate the threat, and they would take action. But why did it have to be just him? Thought a certain one-eyed ninja. This wasn't some infiltration mission, or some routine lord assassination, this was a Kage and not just an S-level threat but a fully controlled Jinchuriki to boot. There was a reason Yagura had gotten away with as much killing as he had. The copy ninja sent a purposeful glance to his fellow sensei. At meeting their eyes, there was an unspoken agreement, they would help Haruki any way they could. Even if it meant confronting the old Hokage with the support of the Jonin Council. Asuma for his part was staring at his old man's unreadable face. What was he thinking? How could Haruki do the mission without any backup? Didn't he want him to succeed? And why was Haruki so calm in taking it? It was then that the Hokage spoke seeing as most of them seemed finished. I would now like to call for a vote concerning the treaty in front of you with the conditions as well as the mission layout. Choza Akimichi, head of the Akimichi clan, I vote yes. Inochi Yamanaka, head of the Yamanaka clan, I vote yes. Shikaka Nara clan head, it's troublesome but I vote yes. Shibi Aburama, head of the Aburama clan, I vote yes. Tsuma Izunaka, head of the Izunaka clan, I agree to the conditions. Hayashi Hyuga, head of the Hyuga clan, I agree. It was a well laid out plan and if this meant giving the man he owed so much to assistance all the better. Tojiro Modesai, civilian representative to the council, I vote yes as this would appear to be very profitable for Konoha. Haruma Mitokado, village elder, I vote yes. Koharu Yudatane, village elder, I vote yes. I, Shiruma Danzo, head of the Shiruma clan and village elder, vote in favor of the measure. Wonderful, then I'll ratify the measure and, pardon me Hokage-san, but there is still the matter of the mission you have just assigned to Kazama-san in particular. Interrupted Danzo. Haruki looked taken aback while the old Hokage looked unsurprised. Almost as if he expected it. While it is convenient to have no record of him for the sake of this mission, the fact remains that no one has any proof of his qualification for the mission. There are no records of him anywhere save for the most recent events and the testimony here. I myself have seen his seal work when they activated around his dwelling during my home welcoming visit following our previous meeting. It was Sarutobi's turn to be surprised. Why didn't Haruki tell me? Furthermore, despite his skill at infiltration and sealing, there is little evidence that qualifies him as a Jonin, let alone able to take on a Kage and the support of his village. Even if Haruki through Fuinjutsu is able to neutralize the Mizukage Spiju, which is doubtful without two teams of Umbu working in tandem, he still has to fight the young Kage and his legions. I trust Haruki's skills. Is that not enough, Danzo? The Hokage replied calmly. It is the duty of the Hokage to ensure the well-being of the citizens and ninja of this village to the best of their ability. Yet despite such an long-term mission and success, Kazama-san has been overlooked by you for all policies concerning those that return for extensive missions. He hasn't received a health screening, psych evaluation, and most importantly none of the skill evaluation exercises have been preformed. Thus he is in the eyes of the village inactive and should not be on the shinobi roster by your own laws. The one exception is in dire need of the village, or should the skill of the ninja verified be previous records be sufficient as to not cause concern, but you have asked us to trust a shinobi that may not be fit for duty with a delicate diplomatic mission of great risk. This cannot go unchallenged. Therefore I call a vote for the removal of Kazama Haruki from the mission. Haruki looked like he was about to explode with fury, but he also knew that if he did he would just be proving Danzo's point. He was also very concerned by Sarutobi's relaxed posture, as if he had expected and was prepared for this. And they began to vote. Very well, Hitozen began carefully with a subtle smirk that only Danzo seemed to get. If you cannot trust my judgment, then I suppose I have no choice but to put on a demonstration. Everyone seemed puzzled with what the Hokage could mean. Haruki, on the other hand, was starting to get an idea, and he wasn't sure he liked it. In an effort to prove Haruki's skill and adhere to the council's apprehensions, I offer this as an addendum to Elder Danzo's motion. In 1 week's time, Haruki and I will put on an exhibition match for all those above Genin rank in the Chunin exam stadium. No holds barred. Should he be able to hold his own or defeat me, that will be more than enough evidence of his skill and will satisfy all the requirements to be active on the roster. This not up for debate or discussion and will happen regardless of this vote. Now then, I believe we must resolve Elder Danzo's motion as it stands now. The motion being to allow Haruki to demonstrate his skills in a duel with me or face removal from the mission. Alternatively, he will just be removed from the mission by Konoha law. Choza Akimichi, head of the Akimichi clan, I vote no. I feel that all of this is a bit unnecessary, and didn't we just approve him as our seal master? He should be here organizing the sealing corps and outfitting Konoha's defenses while recovering from his mission. Inochi Yamanaka, head of the Yamanaka clan, I vote no. Pardon me, let me rephrase that. Hell no. I mean no offense to Haruki-san, but I've already made my opinion quite clear to you on the matter of Haruki's treatment, Hokage-sama. He deserves better even if he himself doesn't want it. Shikaka Nara clan head, it's troublesome, but I vote yes. We need to know what Haruki is capable of to properly utilize him in the village. Plus, this could be an opportunity to boost morale among the troops that don't often get to see such events and live to tell the tale. I'm sure a medical team will be on standby, and there are plenty of loyal shinobi present to intervene should things go too far. Haruki fits this mission perfectly, and we just approved the treaty that will give him the help he needs. Shibi Aburama, head of the Aburama clan, I vote yes. If Haruki-san can prove that he is strong enough to hold his own against a Kage without the element of surprise in one-on-one combat, then I'm quite certain he is qualified for the mission. I also trust him and the Hokage not to kill each other. So Mizunaka, head of the Izunaka clan, no, I don't care how qualified he is. Haruki has been in enemy territory for 8 years. In deep cover with incredible stress that I can practically smell coming off of him. Someone else should step up and take this mission. Hayashi Hyuga, head of the Hyuga clan, I vote yes. I agree, as it serves the purpose of Danzo's reservation as to the capability of Haruki's skills in battle, and I myself am curious to see just what Haruki-san can do. And as already pointed out, there is no one better to take the mission. Tojiro Motasai, civilian representative to the council, I abstain from voting. Haruma Mitokado, village elder, I vote no. This is ridiculous and foolish. There is no need for potential injury to assets of the village. As other council members have pointed out, we should have Haruki focus of his new position and acclimating to life in this village. Such a critical asset doesn't need to be risked on a gamble worthy of Senju Tsunade herself. Koharu Yudatane, village elder, I vote no, and I cannot believe this is even being considered. This is unprecedented foolhardiness even for you, Hiruzen. What if an attack occurs while this match of yours is going on and we are caught unawares? With our forces occupied and you potentially injured or at the least winded, how can you perform your duties as Hokage? There was a long pause as everyone turned with bated breath to Danzo. Hiruzen held the Hokage's vote and his own clan's. Danzo's vote would break the tie. I, Shiruma Danzo, head of the Shiruma clan and village elder, vote in favor of the measure. If Haruki can defeat Hiruzen, I mean Hokage-sama, then we should have no objection to him carrying out his duty to the village. Not just anyone can challenge a Kage even in a friendly setting, and it will test more than his physical skills. Should he win, there is no need to question him. But should he fail, he should immediately be moved to the reserve unit and surrendered to me for in-depth treatment and reconditioning until he is deemed fit for duty. Few times required more of Haruki's already strained self-control than this. He knew he should have expected something to go wrong. Some opposition or obstacle he had expected. The last place he thought it would come from, though, was the Sandaime Hokage. And now Danzo was capitalizing on it. Worst of all, though, he could never prove it, he could swear those two had planned this. So now he had a match to defeat the god of shinobi, the professor himself, in front of a crowd of leaf ninja, and he could not use half of his abilities because it would raise too many questions like, why does some no-name shinobi that reminds us of the fourth with red hair know the Rasengan? Yes, everything was just peachy. Those that looked at Haruki for a reaction witnessed what could only be described as a typhoon barely bottled by very thin fragile stony glass. Some were tempted to poke it and see what happened but wisely decided to refrain for the moment, as no good would come from angering the seal master. That is agreeable, the Hokage finally said nonchalantly. Haruki and I will face off in 1 week's time. Spread the word among the ANBU, Jonin and Chunin, but only that I will be testing someone and only those that are off duty may attend. Haruki, you are forbidden from entering the arena until the day and time of our match or you forfeit. You may use training ground 47 to prepare all to yourself or any other grounds that you wish so long as others are aware and safe. The redhead's tight nod was all the reply the old Hokage got. Well, I do believe that concludes our business. I call the meeting adjourned. You are dismissed. No one moved for a moment as Haruki and the Hokage deactivated the security seals. Haruki then, with arms stuffed in his trench coat, spun on his heel and walked with slow, measured, overly controlled steps to the door, not making eye contact with anyone. Kakashi, after sharing a meaningful glance with the other sensei, got up and they as a group filed out and caught up with the redhead. The rest of the various groups broke off. The two Hyuga heading to their compound along with Shibi and Tsum, who still needed rest after their mission. The elders went to their homes, scowling the entire way at the events that has unfolded. The Inoshikacho trio walk along in companionable silence, each with different worries running through their mind but all centered around one man in particular. The rest of those present departed to their homes, ready to let sleep relieve them of the tension they got from tonight. Only one remained in the chamber as the ANBU stood guard on either side of the door. He had not moved and neither had the Hokage. Saying nothing, the doors closed with Danzo and the Hokage staring at each other, unspoken messages traveling between them into the quiet of the night. X.X.X. They were completely silent as the group walked down the streets of Konoha. It was late and they were all a bit tired, but none of the sensei were about to leave the redhead. After the bomb that clearly just got dropped on him, he clearly needed support. The only problem was none of them quite knew how to do it. Whether it was because they didn't know him well enough or just were lacking in the comforting department in general, they didn't quite know how to begin. Kurenai had tried congratulating him on his recent promotion and had offered going out for drinks. It showed just how far she was willing to go to try and help the obviously emotionally charged redhead, as this was not like her at all. Haruki has just thanked her and politely turned her down. Even when Guy and Asuma tried to pitch in, the redhead rebuffed all their attempts. So they continued to walk with him in silence until finally it came for most of them to branch off back to their own homes. Seeing that the redhead Jonin did not even break stride as he continued walking down his own way with Kakashi making no indication he was leaving his side, the smoker of the group called out to him. Haruki, concern and remorse evident in his voice. At hearing the tone in his voice, the time traveler stopped still in his tracks, and though they could not see his face, his eyes widened at the sound. How had it come to this? Why did they care so much? Taking the stop in his forward progress as a sign of improvement, the bearded Jonin tried to keep momentum going and continued. We can't imagine what you're going through. It was clear to all of you how blindsided you were by the events of the tonight. And the ultimatum you are subject to, we believe to be completely unfair. The redhead didn't not react any, just stood there ridged and listened, so the Jonin continued. I don't know why Dad is choosing to do this. But you have our full support. Haruki turns his head just enough to look back at them with one stormy blue eye. The Jonin stare back unblinking, as if looking away would take away from his claim. You have been a huge impact on our students and on us. And though it may be hard to believe in such short a time, we consider you a friend. They could see a change in something behind the redhead's weary eyes but could quite place it. It was Guy that spoke next. We understand that you have your secrets. That there is more going on than we are aware of. We know that whatever it is, that it is a heavy burden. Whatever you've been through, know that while our youthful curiosity may not abate, neither will our trust in you. You've proven yourself even if you hadn't intended to do so to each of us. And just as swiftly as it left, the tension returned full force before his shoulders slackened at the end. His face betrayed nothing though, and Guy cursed himself for almost making things worse, but it had to be said. Before he could continue though, Kurenai spoke softly at last. Haruki, we are not demanding your secrets or even implying that you should share them at all. We just want you to know you're not alone anymore. This isn't Kumo or wherever you came from. We want to help you. No matter how this test turns out. Not just for the sake of our students that admire you, but for your own, because you are our comrade and I hope friend. Maybe one day you'll be ready to share. Until then, just know we are here. During her speech, Kurenai had walked within touching distance of the redhead, features soft and weighted with worry and sadness. The sweet kind. And when she reached the end, she leaned in and kissed him lightly on the cheek before turning around and walking back over to where the others were. Asuma couldn't even bring himself to be jealous. He knew what she was doing. Inochi's words from the other night came back to him as he thought, Haruki doesn't understand love anymore. When she reached them, she nodded to the both of them before turning her head over her shoulder and ruby red eyes met shocked ice blue. Good night Haruki, we look forward to seeing you at training. And after the other two jonin offered similar parting words, they turned and walked the roads that would take them to their respective homes. After this Haruki turned frozen in place, seemingly ignoring the silver-haired jonin standing next to him, watching him carefully with a relaxed pose with a deceptively disinterested lone eye. It wasn't until Haruki's hand had touched his cheek where she kissed him that Haruki had begun walking again, silently looking forward and hand caressing his own cheek still. They continued on their way until suddenly Kakashi stopped. Haruki, Kakashi said with a slight concerned and mildly forceful edge. Where are you going? Where does it look like, Kakashi? To train. The redhead replied with a snarky huff. Why wouldn't he just let him go? Didn't he have better things to do? At this point the sky seemed to darken. Wasn't it a full moon tonight? Kakashi's lone eye squinted dangerously. I don't think that's such a good idea. You are clearly upset, and training on anger and rage will only get you hurt. I'm not Naruto, Kakashi. Haruki spat as he whirled around to face the silver-haired jonin. I'm not some genin that can't take care of himself. And no doubt you would let him go off to train to let off steam. Naruto's training doesn't involve flinging AS-rank jutsu or concentration-heavy fuinjutsu, where no doubt the slightest slip can result in a very painful death even for someone as skilled as you. Kakashi replied calmly, though you could see his breath as he spoke. So you think that I should just sit by and relax until the Hokage's duel, huh? Fight a Kage with just casual preparation. Not just any Kage, but arguably the strongest of the third tier. Stronger than Inoki of Kekatoda Jiden. Haruki knew he was being irrational, but he was so angry and hurt at the moment he didn't really care. He didn't know where all this emotion was coming from. Yes, he was upset with the Hokage for blindsiding him, and yes, he was slightly nervous about the whole ordeal. Not because he thought he would lose. No, quite the opposite. And what if he hurt the old man? It's not like he's an Edo Tensei and could bounce back from everything. How would they all react? What if his rather new abilities raised too many questions? All this was going through Haruki's mind, but none of it explained such intense emotions. He didn't notice the pressure in the air or the thin sheets of ice formed from the light dew of the summer night that seemed to spawn everywhere and most blatantly around him. I didn't say that, Kakashi said as he pinched the bridge of his nose, irritation set in his voice. Why were people so difficult? His mind was racing with possibilities. Something was very wrong. Why was Haruki's chakra causing this reaction? Did he have a Keka Genkai? Of course, you should prepare. He continued, gesturing to the side. But is now really the best time to dash? He was interrupted when Haruki, in his tornado of emotions and the famous Uzumaki temper showing itself, got right up in his face. The air temperature dropped drastically and seemed to hum, though Haruki didn't seem to notice not even the rumbling that seemed to emanate from the sky at that moment. You think they're right? You think I can't handle it? You want them poking around in my head? I bet you even think the Hokage was right too. He was suddenly and forcibly interrupted when Kakashi grabbed the sides of his arms and yelled with a mixture of rage and exasperated desperation as wind whipped around them. I didn't say he was right. Haruki froze, eyes widened, and it was only then that he realized he had been radiating chakra. Oops. Silence descended on them as Haruki swiftly cut off the chakra flow. Everything, even the air itself, seemed to sigh in relief. The temperature rose, the ice vanished, the pressure seemed to return to normal. Looking around, it didn't seem that anyone had witnessed what had happened. Silence persisted for a moment longer, then Kakashi continued, still staring Haruki in the eye, concern evident though slightly less frustration. I didn't say he was right. He continued much softer with a sigh. He let go of the red head, but Haruki did not move, nor did he speak. Kakashi rubbed a hand through his silver hair as he relaxed a bit more, saving his mounting pile of questions for a more stable time. They weren't important right now. Look Haruki, I can't change what the Hokage did, I can't change what the council decided, I can't change what you went through on your mission and whatever trauma came with it. But, What I can do is help you prepare, watch out for you and be there for you. If that means joining you on silent walks around the village dodging people looking to thank you for one of your miracles, so be it. At this point Haruki seemed to blush a little, though he was sure it was just embarrassment. Kakashi then fixed him with a reproachful glare. And if that means I have to stand in your way to keep you from hurting yourself, so be it. I am not going to risk your safety or the potential success of your test because of your emotions. Haruki still didn't say anything and still didn't look away, but twitched slightly at that comment. Kakashi just stood there in the silence, resolutely blocking the street that led out towards the training grounds. In all the time he had known the redhead and observed him, he had never seen him act this way. What did old man Sarutobi do? Patiently waiting for some sort of reaction. Getting none, he continued in a soft neutral tone. I think right now what would be best for you is a good long rest. You will not beat Hokage-sama with anything less than your best. Now we can continue to stand here, or we can go back to your apartment. Haruki took a few more steady breaths and finally broke eye contact. He stuffed his hand back in his pockets, feeling like a chastised child and wrestling with the events that had just unfolded that he hadn't managed to shove away. Still, when he started walking in the direction of his home without so much as a nod of acceptance, Kakashi walked with him step for step. He didn't have his book out and any signs of tension seemed to have abated. He almost hated himself for potentially contributing to the redhead's current state of mind, but was confident he was doing the right thing. Guy didn't give up on him all those years ago, and he wasn't going to give up on Haruki now. They continued on the path, neither shinobi speaking, until they came to the redhead's apartment. As the redhead deactivated the security seals and got out the key, Kakashi had slid down against the railing opposite Haruki's door and was seemingly making himself comfortable. Haruki opened the door a few inches and turned, hand still on the knob, to one-eyed Jonin, eyebrow raised. What are you doing? Ensuring that you don't attempt to go and train without a proper rest. He replied nonchalantly, as if it was a regular occurrence and the most logical, not stalkerish thing to do. Kakashi, who had been getting himself situated, had been expecting some pushback or snarky comment or perhaps another burst of emotion. When none came, he got curious and looked up to meet the redhead's gaze, only to find the door wide open and Haruki inside, having just taken his sandals, Jonin vest, and trench coat off and walking toward his bedroom. There is a couch if you want it. And without further ceremony or exchange, the red disappeared into his room, the bedroom door closing behind with a soft click. Kakashi sat there completely stunned. Did Haruki just invite him to sleep over? Kakashi sat there puzzled and bemused at that notion, and as the minutes ticked by and the front door remained open, he began to wonder if the redhead was serious. Was this some sort of test of trust? Kakashi remained seated another half-hour, pondering everything that he knew and everything he didn't know about Kazuma Haruki before he got up and walked inside. He twitched at the tingling sensation that shot through him as the security seals seemed to wash over him and accept his entrance. Closing the door behind him, Kakashi settled in to enjoy the rest of the night. Meanwhile, in the Hokage's office, the Hokage issued a tired but pleased sigh as the spyglass jutsu fizzled, trying to look inside the sealed apartment. He had of course seen the altercation earlier between the two Jonin. It had been a big gamble, but it seemed to be paying off. Haruki needed the push. He said to himself, hoping that it was a push in the right direction. That's it for part 6. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.